and gentlemen, welcome the one and only heavyweight champion, Damian May.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't clap or anything. Thank you, and welcome to the Top 10 Awards, Fox News Channel. Today you will be counting down the top 10 most important people in the history of the world. These are the people whose actions, whether they knew it at the time or not, changed the history of the world for better or for worse. Without further ado, let me introduce to you number 10, the person who basically brought down the world's greatest empire and inspired all of Jon Snow's storyline. I give you number 10, Emperor Hadrian!
All in all, it's just another brick in the wall.
I'm so sorry.
What did you do? What's wrong?
Well, I totally screwed up. We never should have built that wall.
Slow down, start at the beginning, tell us everything that happened.
Okay, well, I was born in 76 AD, and that was the worst thing to ever happen to Rome. The best thing to happen to Rome was my death in 138. It was either a part of Spain or in Rome. I really don't remember. I grew up as a very loyal civil servant. I had a very successful military career, and the Emperor Trajan was always presenting me with some kind of award. I was actually fighting one of Trajan's battles in Syria when the Emperor died. His last words proclaimed that I was to be the next Emperor of Rome. That's when things went a little crazy. I put down the Jewish revolts in the Middle East, and then I spent most of my reign going around the empire, telling people to build things. At first it was nothing big, just some things to help our infrastructure. Then I told them to build these walls that were supposed to keep Rome separate from the outside world. I figured Rome was so great at this point that there was no point in trying to get better. I surrendered pretty much all of the wars, and the Trajan started focusing on improving Rome from the inside. It was all well and good for a while, but over the course of many years, it kind of backfired. When I told them to stop expanding Rome, I never imagined that Rome would stop growing. Over the course of the next few centuries, Rome got very weak, and that moron Constantine moving the capital didn't exactly help at all. In 452, Rome got sacked by the Vandals, and it never really went back to the way it was before. So basically, if it hadn't been for me canceling our wars in the Middle East and stopping expansion all over the place, Rome may have lasted much longer. The fall of Rome was what caused the Middle Ages, which put a real damper on culture in Europe. Basically, since Rome occupied the Middle East, which was essentially the source of the Renaissance, the fall of Rome slowed the process of the Renaissance. If it hadn't been for that, Europe may not have lost any knowledge from the classical age at all, and history and science may have progressed a lot faster. So I guess take my advice and never build a wall around your empire.
Thanks for being on the show, Hadrian. Now go find yourself some antidepressants, will ya? Next up, we have a man who, like Hadrian, made one decision that changed the history of the world forever. I give you the most important little accident in the history of the world, number 9, Charles Martel! Oh!
Let's get down to business. I'm Charles, son of Pepin. Yes, I was illegitimate, and yes, I should be higher on this list.
That's debatable.
I was born around 670 AD in France. My father, Pepin, died in 714. I was able to become the mayor of the palace, which is basically an office that handles all the king's dirty work. And boy, was my work dirty. Not only was the Merovingian dynasty a joke, but there's a huge threat from the south plaguing Europe, the Moors. The old fat king wouldn't do anything about that issue, so it was up to me to stop them from taking over Europe. At the Battle of Tours in 732, my forces were able to defeat the Moors, and thus protect France from any further threat from Islam. This battle also pretty much ended the Merovingian dynasty, as it proved that they were weak and unworthy of the throne. They wouldn't put aside their powers, and my son Pepin the Short would become king. From a historical standpoint, my actions were very crucial because it changed the course of the spread of Islam. If it weren't for the Battle of Tours, it is likely that the Moors wouldn't have stopped at France, but they would have conquered, if not, they would have conquered most of Europe. This would mean that eventually Rome would be sacked for only the billionth time. Only this time the invaders would stay and ensure Christianity no longer had power. Islam would have become the most popular religion in Europe. And many of the founding principles of Christian nations, such as the United States, wouldn't have existed. And I also gave my son the tools to start the Carlovingian dynasty, which would make France the most powerful nation in Europe for the next century. If not for this dynasty, the Vatican might not have been as powerful, either because it might not have gotten the donation of Pepin. The question still remains, why am I not higher on this list?
Well, you see, a Muslim Europe may not have actually been so bad. The Muslims were actually doing pretty well during the Middle Ages. This would have meant you guys might have actually had a bit more knowledge during that time. The fact remains, though, that a Muslim Europe would have been a very different Europe, and so we do thank you for that. Charles Martel, everyone.
Welcome back. Now, we had a few weather difficulties, by which I mean I got soaked. So, we're in here now for the show, only on the Box News channel. Don't do drugs. Coming in at number 8 is the most influential jerk in the history of the world. This man's life of discovery and adventure led to the founding of one of the most powerful nations in the world today. Not to mention made bank for a certain European power. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome number 8, Christopher Columbus!
I claim to stand for Spain.
Yeah, that's great. Now, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born in this famed trade city of Genoa in 1451. I grew up learning the trade of trading and seafaring. I worked as a business agent's apprentice, took part on a voyage from Genoa that delivered many valuable goods to other parts of Europe, and most importantly, I claimed land for Spain. Due to the Islamic sack of Constantinople, it wasn't easy for Europe to trade with the Indies anymore. The quickest trade route was to go around the tip of Africa. I had a great idea of going west, hopefully discovering a new route that way. So what I did was set off into the west to find a new route to the Indies. I went to the kings of many different nations, but most importantly, Spain. They said no. But like any guy applying for a job, I kept pestering them until they let me do it. After Spain had won a battle that landed them with a lot of monies, they finally decided to fund my voyage. And boy did it pay off. I didn't find the Indies, but I did find America, a place that no European had really thought about utilizing yet. So I claimed it for Spain, and after meeting some bling-covered natives, found a great source of wealth. So we kidnapped a bunch of natives over the course of 4 voyages, and kept a steady flow of resources from the Americas to Spain.
Kidnap people as slaves?
No, I said we made bank for Spain and kidnapped natives as slaves. Anyway, I died in 1506 of gout.
It says here, this says that modern doctors believe that you died of a form of arthritis brought about by...
ST what? Well, it doesn't matter. What does matter is long-term impact. Not only did we create some new navigation tools that were used by important explorers centuries after my death, my crew and I also managed to wipe out much of the Native Americans' culture. This is pretty big, don't you think?
Didn't you do anything good?
Well, the discovery of the New World encouraged an age of European colonization that would eventually lead to the founding of the United States. This is probably one of the most important things we did, because the United States is currently a world superpower that would have never been founded if no one had been brave enough to settle out in the New World. If that's not big long-term impact, I don't know what is.
Well, I just want to say that I absolutely hate your guts, I'm disgusted by you, and I think you're the worst person I've ever met. But you did without doubt have a huge impact on the world, so I guess congrats?
I think so. I met this Irishman a few weeks ago who had me at like number 16. 16! Can you believe that? Some people, you know.
Welcome back to the top 10. Let's jump right into number 7. This man was one of the most hated men in the world while he was alive. Please welcome the man who told the harsh truth about life on Earth. Number 7, Charles Darwin!
How do you do, Mr. May?
Welcome to the show, Mr. Darwin. Podium's all yours.
Wow. Well, I was born in 1809 in Shropshire, England. All my life, I was aspiring to be a biologist. I learned taxidermy from a freed slave, and I have spent the summer of 1825 helping my father play doctor. I went to med school in Edinburgh, but I'm most famous for is what I found on my voyage around the world via the Beagle. On this trip, I took great notes and wrote down my findings. What I found was shocking. It seemed there were a variety of very similar organisms that varied based on only their environments. So my hypothesis was, but I'm not positive if it is true or not. So bear with me. Organisms have not always been the way they are. I wondered if perhaps they could have started as one thing and then changed depending on their environments. I call this process by which organisms grew better adapted to their habitats evolution. And the process by which evolution occurs, natural selection. Now, I'm not positive on this, but I think it's very plausible. I think so!
Actually, Mr. Darwin, your theory of natural selection has been adopted as a fact by most scientists.
Really? I wasn't so sure myself. Anywho, regardless of what people believe about my theory, it has led to a wide variety of discoveries in the field of bigogology. After this idea was proposed, people started looking for ways to both support it and disapprove it. If not for me, the discoveries of many early hominids may have been treated very differently if they had been discovered at all. Scientists have also elaborated on my theory using various forms of evidence found over the years to help support it. The entire field of embryology essentially is used to show the evolutionary relationships between embryos of different species. Putting the scientific aspects aside, my theory has also given rise to other theories concerning the origins of life. Creationism was no longer the only plausible explanation. My discoveries have held a great sway in the world ever since I published them, revolutionizing the field of bigogology and giving rise to various other fields of study. That is why I am number 7 on this list.
Coming in at number 6 is the man who is credited with the creation of one of the most important innovations of the modern world. Please welcome Bob Kahn.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Kahn, you have something very different from the rest of the people on our list. Do you know what that is?
It is that I'm still alive.
Yes, that's it. You're the only one who's still kicking in the real world.
Well then, how'd you get the other guys on here?
Oh, they're just actors. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about why you're on the list.
Well, I was born in December of 1938. I was a very good student in school. Sporty, musical, handsome. I went to 2 different colleges. Queens College for 2 years, and Manhattan for 3.
What did you study?
Well, the only thing that really challenged me a ton was science and math. Well, I studied industrial engineering, but then I decided instead to look into chemical engineering. In 1960, I finally graduated with my degree in electrical engineering. In 1967, that was my big year. It was when I started contributing to the production of the first computer. This was a big supercomputer that we were building for the Defense Department. I ended up becoming the co-inventor of the original Transmission Control Protocol System and Internet Protocol. These 2 things, in layman's terms, are what allow the computers to talk to one another. Essentially, the long-term impact was that this was the creation of the internet, which I also helped to develop. In the 1970s, we were able to use IP technology to build the internet up into the monster form it is today. Think about it. The only reason any of the other groups were able to do this project was by using my invention. There are currently at least 20 internet accessing devices in this classroom right now. Many schools have taken to using the internet as a replacement for all sorts of things, from textbooks to report cards. The internet is the main way that people in the 21st century are able to communicate with each other. And even though it's very recent, it has impacted just about every person in the world, and will continue to do so. Who knows, maybe in a century, I'll be number one.
Oh, you just broke the fourth wall, right? I mean, these guys didn't even know it was a video. Wait, where'd he go? Welcome back to the top 10. Now, the last few people on our list could really be argued at any point on the top 100. But these next 5 people are definitely, without a doubt, the most important people ever to live. So without further ado, let's introduce number 5, Moses!
What was that noise?
I'm not sure. Tell you what, you explain why you're number 5, I'll go find the soundtrack guy.
Well, I was born in Egypt sometime in the 1300s BC. Now my people were the Hebrews, who were living in Egypt for many years prior. And by living there, I mean acting as slaves to the Pharaoh. So after receiving a vision from God, I decided to take the Hebrews out of Egypt and lead them to the land that God promised them. That's a story for another day, though. In the end, I did lead the Hebrews out of Egypt. What's more is I received the laws of the Jewish faith from God after we got out of there. I don't care to brag, but I'm also credited with writing the Torah, and the Muslims know me as the prophet foretold the coming of Muhammad. Anyway, the organizing of the Jewish religion is very important to history because it gave rise to both Islam and Christianity, which are the 2 most practiced religions in the whole entire world. These 2 religions have impacted the world in countless ways, and they are both derived from me. Judaism itself has also led to many issues in the world. When I led the Jews to a land flowing with milk and honey, I never imagined someone else would have found it first. The Jews and the Palestinians have been at each other's throats for years. Now it has developed into a real issue since weapons of mass destruction became a thing. Overall, the Jewish religion is very important because it shaped many of the popular religions in the world today. It has brought many world conflicts, such as the Arab-Israeli conflict.
So there's been a rumor floating around that there may have been an extra 5 commandments. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, there were, but ever since God gave me this fabulously awesome new tablet, I can keep track of all of them. Much easier. Yep, there's no way we're going to lose any more of these things. Oh my gosh!
At number 4, we have arguably the most important conqueror in the history of the world. We are very lucky to have him here today. It took a lot of arranging. So please give your warmest welcome to number 4, Muhammad the Prophet!
Yeah, where is he? He said he'd be here, and he's not. What do you mean it's against his religion? No. Get him on the phone. I just need to talk to him. No, not his agent. Get Muhammad on the... This is well, we didn't hire a new soundtrack guy yet anyway. Muhammad was born in the city of Mecca in 570. He spent much of his time managing a caravan business, from which he gained a lot of access to the different religions of Arabia. He was also known to retire to a cave and pray and meditate. One evening, while he was praying, the prophet received a vision from the angel Gabriel. granted him the first of a 20-year series of visions that Muhammad would record and over time write down in the Quran, which is the holy book of Islam. Muhammad taught that there was only one God, called Allah. Now, since Islam promoted Muhammad as a kind of leader and kind of went against what was normal there, the officials didn't like it at all. In fact, the Prophet would have to leave his hometown of Mecca for Medina due to the tension there. The joke was on them, though, because Muhammad would gain a lot of followers in Medina and end up conquering Mecca, and a lot more. Many people hold Muhammad to be one of the most important people in history because he was able to influence a very numerous world religion, as well as conquer a lot of area. From the start of his conquest to centuries after his death, the Muslims conquered from Persia all the way to Spain by way of Africa. The Muslims would reach their most powerful during the Ottoman Empire, which was responsible for the sack of Constantinople. His influence on the world comes mainly from his creation of the Islamic faith, as well as his conquest. Islam proved to be a very effective religion for the Middle East. While medieval Europe was facing a drastic decrease in culture, the Middle East was getting better and better. Muslim scholars were able to utilize the works of both Persian and Greek scholars, which led to the writing of many important books. This was the time of 1001 Arabian Nights, the dreaded first algebra book, and a more developed medical encyclopedia. This spread of knowledge also gave rise to the first universities out there, which still stand today, such as the Al-Azhar in Cairo. Little fun fact, the traditional cap and gown that we'll be seeing, or already have seen, I don't know when we're showing this to you guys, were from Muslim universities. Knowledge from the Islamic Golden Age eventually spread to Europe during the Crusades. This was a major component in speeding up the process of the Renaissance. As of today, Islam is the second most practiced religion in the whole world, and a major factor in modern issues such as the Arab-Israeli conflict and the Pakistan and India crisis. Muhammad was a very important person in the history of the world. Why isn't he number one, you may ask? Well, because there's 3 people who we think are more important. Hello, and welcome back to the Top 10. We're now getting into the big leagues, the top 3. Took us a lot of debating to decide on the order of these people. Though they could come in any order, we've agreed that this is probably the best fit for them all. By the way, now's a good time as any to give a brief shout out to Micah, who kindly kept Caroline out of our hair during the making of this Box News special. Number 3 is a person who probably would be shocked to be here now. He died a poor man, though his creation was probably the most crucial device in the history of the world. Just about every person on the list has been impacted by the invention of this dude. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Johannes Geinsfleischer Zerladen Zoom Gutenberg.
Gutenberg, thank you. And you're correct, Mr. May. I am absolutely surprised to be here.
Yes, I understand that you died with very little money.
Yes. However, currently my financial position is much more sound.
Please, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you are the 3rd most influential person in the entire history of the world?
Well, I was born in Mainz, Germany in the year 1398. I actually don't remember a lot about my early life, but there was a revolt against the upper class in Mainz when I grew up. My family eventually moved to Strasbourg, where I studied at the University of Erfurt.
Ever married?
I don't remember. If I was, it didn't go so well. Anyhow, in 1445 I invented a mechanism that was able to efficiently copy manuscripts by using ink and presses. I called it the printing press. This invention allowed for books to be printed faster and without as much expense. Before this, books had to be handwritten on parchment in order to be copied. After making this, I set out to work printing Bibles with the funds of a man named Johann Fust. Unfortunately, I would be sued by Fust, and he won the ownership of my workshop, so I didn't really benefit much from it. In fact, by the time I died, little was known about my contributions to the world, and to make things worse, my grave was lost. In the long run, however, my invention proved to be very important to the world, as it was able to effectively reduce the price of books. You think college textbooks are bad now. In the 1300s, if you owned a book, you were either a high lord or a thief. With the price of books reduced, the demand rose, and as the demand rose, literacy rates did as well. What's more is that my invention essentially created the Italian language, as it was responsible for printing Dante's Inferno. This popularized the Florentine language that eventually evolved into the Italian you pretend to speak today.
Arrivederci.
The printing press also helped to spread the influence of humanism during the Renaissance, which led to a variety of new philosophical ideas in Europe. Yep, almost every person on this list has me to thank for the spread of their ideas. The origin of species may not have been accredited to Darwin if not for the printing press, as there were other people gaining on his ideas when he was newly published. Even the textbook written by...
Wait, no, get out here. Gonna spoil the rest of our list at that rate. Everyone give a hand for Gutenberg. Isn't he great? The printing press essentially changed the way knowledge was spread in Europe. Not only has been built on over the ages, it also holds its purpose even in the computerized modern world. He was right in saying that his invention impacted almost everyone else on the top 50 list by making the spread of their ideas cheaper and more efficient. The printing press is by far the most important invention in the history of the world. Numero Dos is one of the first major physicists of all time. Though he claims he saw farther by standing on the shoulders of giants, I think it's safe to say that he is now considered a giant by almost all scientists to follow. Please welcome number 2, Sir Isaac Newton!
Thank you. It's an honor, really.
Sir Newton, the podium is all yours.
Thank you. Where to begin? I'm from Woolsthorpe, England. My father died before I was born, and my mother remarried about 3 years ago after I happened. So I was raised by my grandparents. I eventually reunited with my mother when I was 12, and I attended school in Grantham, much against my mother's wishes. But after many years, I graduated with my uncles and helped convince my mother to let me go to college in Cambridge in 1661.
Very good in school, Mr. Newton.
I was horrible. They call that a paradox. I was much more interested in modern philosophy than I was in schoolwork. Although advanced mathematics did intrigue me a lot, it was through these philosophers that I was exposed to binomial theorem, which was in rough shape when I found it. After the university closed due to the Great Plague, I went home and started researching and drawing conclusions. Using the binomial theorem, I was able to lay the groundwork for calculus. I also proved that color was a concept entirely based on light. I developed this theory in my book, Optics, which I published in 1704. What I'm probably most famous for, however, is Principia, my findings concerning the law of universal gravitation and my 3 laws of motion. That book came out in 1687 and was a lot more influential than the sequel. I then went crazy and died.
That? You just dropped dead?
Well, you know, Mercury, that's some crazy stuff, like, crazy. I'm telling ya. Anywho, my long-term impact on history comes mainly from Principia. It is due to the laws of motion that I published within it that helped technology to advance. Every scientist who came after me used those laws in their studies. The laws of motion were instrumental during the Industrial Revolution, in which many new inventors utilized them to create new inventions. They wouldn't have come up with anything better for the next 200 years. Albert Einstein based almost all of his findings on my laws of motion and universal gravitation, and even optics. I essentially created the world of modern science and laid the groundwork for centuries of scientists to come. Not only did I discover crucial knowledge about the world, I also proved that it was possible to draw conclusions based merely on what we can observe in everyday life. My works explain the laws that the entire universe obeys and offered a foundation for all other scientists to build off of.
Mr. Newton, it's been an honor having you on the show today. It's been great talking to one of the greatest scientists in the world, if not the greatest.
Well, I'm on record though. I would like to say that some of that stuff in Principia should be taken with more than a few grains of salt. I did write it after being hit on the head by an apple, you know.
I thought that was just a myth.
No, it's absolutely true. I was just too embarrassed to admit it before.
Back to the Box News channel. it's time to unveil our number one choice for the number one most influential person in world history. But before we unveil our number one choice, we'd like to take a minute to acknowledge a few honorable mentions. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the number one most influential person in the history of the world, Jesus Christ.
Wait, is there a problem?
No, I mean number one is Jesus Christ. Jesus, you've been called the Savior of man, the Son of God, and the Messiah. No doubt to all the religious folk in the world, you've definitely had a giant impact on history. Tell me though, through a completely agnostic point of view, why are you number one?
Thank you for having me today. It's an honor to reach the top of your list. Let me first offer a few details about my early life. I was born around the beginning of the century and I grew up in Galilee. Not much is known about my younger days, but at the age of...
Wait. I know not much is known about your younger days, but I mean, you're Jesus. Couldn't you tell us a little bit?
No. Anyway, around the age of 30, I started to make a real name for myself. That was when my ministry began. I went all over Judea teaching the Word of God. Now, long story short, the Romans didn't like it when the Jews called me their king, and things got a little awkward between me and the Pharisees. What ended up happening was one of my pals betrayed me, and I got crucified by the Roman governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate. Now, you said to come at this agnostically, so I won't mention the part where, after 3 days, I rose from the dead in fulfillment of the old Jewish scriptures. After that detail of resurrection that we're trying really hard to avoid in this account went down, I met with my disciples and organized a new ministry. This was pretty much the start of the Christian religion. My disciples, Peter and Paul in particular, helped to spread my teachings all over the Roman Empire.
Your bannermen, you had your prophets, you basically had the whole empire. So what was the long-term impact of this?
Well, it pretty much changed everything. Christianity was the single most important and popular religion in Europe after the Roman Empire adopted it, and remained so even after the fall of Rome. The Catholic Church was pretty much the most powerful international corporation in Europe during the Middle Ages, and in most cases it was the one thing that countless states had in common. The Church was responsible for helping people through hard times, as well as finding ways to prevent such times. Many of the first medieval scientists and philosophers were monks that devoted their lives to Christianity. These monks also helped to keep culture alive in the Middle Ages because they helped to record and copy old manuscripts. Following that line of thought, the first schools in Europe arose from Christianity. The structures and laws of many governments were also all based on Christian beliefs and traditions. Even the calendar system that's used by most of the world today was a result of the Church. On a not-so-proud note, Christianity was also ultimately responsible for waging a series of wars called the Crusades that led to the Renaissance. Though you have to give the Muslims credit for having the knowledge the Crusaders brought back in the first place, the Crusaders probably would have never gotten to the Holy Land if not for Christianity. Christianity was the driving force behind many wars in European history. Charles Martel's son, Pepin, waged war against the Lombards on account of the Pope. Not to mention wars caused by Martin Luther's Reformation, speaking of which...
Have a glass of water. That was a lot.
Thank you. I bet I could write 3 or 4 page paper about this. Anyway, Christianity's Reformation led to a number of impacts on the world, including new philosophies and ways of interpreting the Word of God. It also led to many groups leaving Europe in order to evade religious persecution. That's right, America was pretty much founded by Christians and set up its entire government based on Christian principles, all my idea. This obviously led to the end of slavery in the West. Since then, Christianity has been a driving force in a number of debates all over the world. In a nutshell, by being the most practiced religion in the world, Christianity has impacted the lives of trillions of people over the past 2,000 years. And if we're here to rank influence, we need to look at amounts of people affected over a certain amount of time. When you put it in those terms, Christianity is without a doubt the most influential religion in the whole world, and it all started with me.
Jesus, as you know, there's like 50 different branches of your religion out there right now. Which one would you say is the best one to follow?
Oh, that's obvious. It's clearly the...
Good to know. Well, congratulations on being number one. We're having kind of a little get-together, dinner party kind of thing afterwards. You know, Hadrian's going to be there, Martel left, but, you know, most people are going to be there. So I was wondering if you'd like to come to that.
I don't know. My Last Supper didn't end so well for me. I think I'll take a ring check.
Not a problem. It's been a pleasure, Jesus. And here's your trophy. Congratulations on being the 2012 Good Citizenship Award on the #1 most important person in history.
Who's Damien May?
That was Jesus, everyone, and that's all for you today. That was the Box News Channel's top 10 most influential people in the history of the world. I'm Damien May, and as always, don't do drugs, 'cause they'll get ya.
I think so.
Yes, I should be higher on this list.
That's debatable. Oh.
Religion.
I just injected too much mercury.
No.
No, too much mercury. You can just. I just dropped. No, mercury is some strong stuff. After too much mercury, I kind of just like drop dead. It's crazy.
Oh. Which one would you say follows the Bible most accurately to what you'd want?
Well, that's clearly...
Oh.
Mr. May, I'm absolutely surprised to be here.
It was on the wrong page. What happened?
It's your line.
Oh.
Hurt.
What does it say? Erfurt. Yeah.
Oh, there's no T there.
Erfurt. Alright, start from the beginning of that paragraph.